Should teens be allowed to purchase violent video games? Kill Bill, all the Saw movies, and The Devil Rejects are some of the most violent movies out there to buy today. With such gruesome movies like these, many parents should not let their teens go out and watch these movies due to the violence and sexual content in these movies. The parents to these teens do not want them watching because these teenagers need to know the difference between what is right and what is wrong when it comes to dealing with conflict. And by watching gory movies such as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre without parental supervision, teenagers would most likely turn to violence to solve a problem rather than talking it out with a person. Parents would say no in a heartbeat if their teen wanted to go see a movie such as The Hill Has Eyes. If parents would say no to watching gory, gruesome movies, they should also say no to playing video games that are gruesome and gory as that. For example, all the Grand Theft Auto video games, like this one, GTA 5, and the Call of Duty games, contain violence and sexual content, which if a teenager played these video games, could turn them into a violent person. Teens should not be allowed to be able to purchase aggressive video games due to the fact it makes them more aggressive, numb to violence, and it causes them to become more depressed. Video games such as Mario Kart and Need for Speed are video games that any age group could go out and play and buy since they are rated G for everyone. These games are not violent, and when teens play these types of games, they are usually happy and full of enjoyment. When parents watch their teenagers play video games such as Mario Kart or Need for Speed, most teenagers, they'll get frustrated for about a minute, but eventually they'll laugh it out and race again. But when parents of the teens that play violent games such as Grand Theft Auto, their teenagers usually become very intense, and they also begin to change their ways when playing these violent video games. They go from solving their problems through talking to solving their problems, but by hurting others physically and mentally. According to an article about a study done by researchers at the Indiana University School of Medicine, it states that brain scans of the kids who play violent games showed an increase in emotional arousal and a decrease in areas in the brain that involve self-control. Which means the teens that played these type of games became more aggressive. Vince Matthews, who is one of the researchers from the Indiana University School of Medicine, did a study on two types of action video games. One video game was violent and the other one was not violent. After Matthew tested two groups of the teens, he scanned their brains with an MRI. Matthews found that the group that played the violent video games for just 30 minutes had a negative effect on their brains than the other group who played a non-video game for 30 minutes. Teens will start doing violent acts if they're able to purchase video games because they become numb to the violence in the game. According to a psychological study done by American Academy of Child Development, the researchers found that teens become numb to violence. They become numb to the violence due to the violent video games. Teens accept violence as a way to solve problems and have gone to sometimes imitate the violence in the video games while mistaking it as real life. Also, in June of 2003, a teen by the name of Devin Moore went on a killing spree after arriving at a police station for suspicious of stealing a car. Once there, he took one of the guns from a police officer, shot two of the officers and a 911 dispatcher, then later on stole their police car and went on a high-speed chase. When he was captured, he said life was like a video game, and there was a study that found that he was a huge fan of Grand Theft Auto video games. When teenagers get the right to purchase these video games, these violent video games, teens will not only become more aggressive, but these teens will also become more depressed. There was a study done by the Center of health promotion and prevention research that found that teens become more depressed playing video games for a very long period of time, violent video games. Researchers started a study with 2 test groups. The first group played a violent video game for 2 hours, while the second test group played a non-violent game for 2 hours. After 2 hours of playing video games, it was found that the first group that played the violent video game showed signs of depression, while the second group did not show any signs of depression. The second group turned out just fine, but the first group ended up changing psychologically. Teens should not be able to purchase violent video games at all. They are still too young, and they still need to learn from their mistakes. These type of video games could influence them to do acts of violence towards others or to themselves. They would not be happy either, because the more they play these games, teens will become more depressed and numb to violence. More laws should be passed to deny the teens the right to purchase violent video games.